Senate Committee on Agriculture, Food Production, and Outdoor Resources will come to order. Kyle, would you please call the roll?
Senators Bean.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Bernsketter. Crawford.
Here.
Gregory.
Here.
McCreary.
Here.
Washington.
We have a quorum. We're going to go into executive session first, so I would make a motion we go into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're in executive session. I make a motion to take up Senate Bill 14 related to pesticide labeling requirements, sponsored by Senator Brown. Do I have a second? Senate Bill 14. This should be Senator Brown's pesticide labeling bill, Senate Bill 14. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senate Bill 14 is for the committee. I make a motion to vote Senate Bill 14 out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, Kyle, please call the roll.
Senators Bean.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
Bernsketter. Crawford.
Aye.
Gregory. McCreary.
No.
Washington.
I'm just voting aye just to get this out, make sure it gets up there. I do want to put on the record, there's still a lot of issues with the bill that should be able to work out.
Thank you, Senator.
6-1.
By your vote of 6-1, Senate Bill 14 is voted out of committee. Do pass. I make a motion to take up Senate Bill 28 relating to cotton trailers, sponsored by myself. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senate Bill 28 is before the committee. I make a motion to vote Senate Bill 28 out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Kyle, please call the roll.
Senators Bean.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
Bernsketter. Crawford.
Aye.
Gregory.
Aye.
McCreary.
Aye.
Washington. 7-0.
By your vote of 7-0, Senate Bill 28 is voted out of committee. Do pass. I make a motion to exit executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are out of executive session. So I appreciate everyone who's traveled across the state to attend today's and participate in today's hearing. For those here to testify on legislation, please speak into the microphone, introduce yourself, address your comments to the committee members. Please keep your comments relevant to the legislation. Once your testimony concludes, the committee members will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please complete the witness appearance form on the table and leave it on the table for our committee minutes. Please silence your cell phones if you not have already. So today we have two bills on the agenda, both addressing water preservation. Senator Berger and I filed separate bills on this issue, but we will present those bills together. Our plan is to present to the committee. Our plan is to present the committee substitute, which will make our bills identical. To make the committee hearing more productive, we will present the committee substitute. I understand that members in the audience probably haven't seen a copy of the substitute yet. They will be made available in my office or right here on the dais. If you plan to testify on the legislation, you can make remarks about the new committee substitute or one of the introduced bills. So my apologies for the getting it to the committee members late, but you should have all got it last night. So with that, Senator Bernsketter, would you please take the gavel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bean, Senator Berger, you all can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, for the record, Senator Jason Bean, representing 25th District, here to present for your consideration Senate Bill 29.
Senator Jamie Berger, representing the 27th District, here to present your Senate Bill 82.
Senate Bill 2982 is legislation about one of our state's greatest natural resources, water, and how we can preserve and protect this resource. Water is even more special in southeast Missouri, as it allows us to have some of the most productive farmland in the country.
Over the last few years, we've heard stories about states like California and Kansas having severe droughts and water shortages. We don't want to lose our water to them because they have mismanaged their supply or for some other reason can't manage it themselves. I think if you think about California should have California water coming out of their fire hydrants and not Missouri water.
This legislation is a proactive approach to addressing the issue of water preservation. I'm not aware of any efforts of others to take our water yet, but it is already happening in North Dakota. With congressional funding, a 125-mile pipeline is diverting water out of the Missouri River Basin and transporting it to the Red River Basin.
Missouri has experienced several severe droughts as well over the last few years. This legislation will protect Missouri's interests first and protect Missouri citizens' existing rights to water for beneficial uses such as farming.
Many people have asked the question, why can't Missouri simply ban the export of water? A total ban on water exportation would violate the federal law regarding interstate commerce. Right now, someone with a well, they can drill a well on their property and start exporting water out of our state right now. And we don't have a remedy to address this. This legislation is inspired by the state of Oklahoma, who created a process by law to address water exportation, and their law was upheld by the Supreme Court.
Missouri is also a riparian water rights state, meaning all landowners whose properties adjoin a body of water have the right to make reasonable use of it as it flows through or over their properties, and does not interfere with the reasonable use of other landowners. Many states out west are called prior appropriation states. They have legal framework where the right to use water is allocated or appropriated.
In Missouri, water is a resource. Out west, water is considered property. Since water is not property in Missouri, this is one of the reasons why states out west are looking to get water from us. In order to protect access, use, and enjoyment of Missouri's water resource, it shall be unlawful for any person to export water resources outside the state of Missouri unless such persons hold a water export permit issued by DNR, with two exemptions: bottled water or water packaged in containers intended for single use, or where the withdrawal and end use are within 30 miles of the state border. This legislation outlines the conditions for the DNR director to review permit applications. The highlights include the volume and withdrawal rates requested by the applicant will not interfere with existing and projected in-state beneficial use. Prioritize the beneficial use needs of Missouri and its citizens over the applicant or other state. Such permit holder shall annually report the water use volumes and withdrawal rates. Written notice to the county commission of the county where the water for exportation is located, and provide a 30-day public comment period.
The legislation outlines the conditions for a permit renewal. Permits are for 3 years. This legislation also outlines several safeguards for citizens, which include a major water user as defined in state statute may request DNR to evaluate any existing water exportation permit. Such permit holder shall annually report the water use volumes and withdrawal rates. Nothing shall preclude a person from bringing any constitutional, statutory, or common law claim to vindicate or otherwise defend a person's water rights. If the Attorney General receives a complaint that provisions of this legislation have been violated, or at the request of DNR, the Attorney General may bring an injunctive action or other appropriate action in the name of the people of the state to enforce provisions of this legislation. Whenever a state of emergency is declared by the governor or any part of the state based on drought conditions, DNR shall reevaluate any existing water export permit. Within 60 days after closure of the public comment period, the DNR director shall recommend approval or denial of the permit. Such recommendation, along with all public comments, shall be submitted to the commission for final action.
I'd be glad to take any questions, and we rehearsed that till about midnight last night. So.
I was going to say, y'all are a very good duo. Senator Gregory, do you have a question? He does. Proceed.
Senator Berg, you remember last year in the House, we had this on the floor, and I had some concerns from people around me that this legislation would prevent you from even taking a 5-gallon bucket of water out of your pond, and I guess go throwing it on the neighbor's, yard or flowers, or going across state lines. Can you just speak to that? That way, we're on record and where we're at.
To have any impact on our water tables in the state of Missouri, it would have to be a pipeline that would be continuous flow. You couldn't take enough water by a truck We're talking about major water users, major water exports that we're trying to control. You know, even last year, Senator Gregory, we got to talking about people taking a truck and hauling water across the state, you know, in a transport load. You couldn't really make a dent in a pond, no matter how many trucks you would have. So we're talking about major water users basically out pipelining out.
Thank you.
So that's not regulated if you take a tank load of water?
No.
That's not,
No.
okay, not part of this legislation. All right, anybody in favor of legislation, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm Laura Collins from the Sykeston area. I'm a farmer first and president of the Southeast Missouri Regional Water District second. We farm around Bell City, 7,000 acres. We're obviously a major water user in our irrigation district. Irrigation water is very significant to the quality and the abundance of our crops. Without our water and the constant availability of our water and the fact that we've had droughts so frequently recently over the last few years, I don't know if we would have the ag sector in our area. It wouldn't be have near the historical flow of crops from our area. Anybody have any questions?
Senator Gregory?
If you don't mind,
I don't
it's
mind.
kind of a fun one. In my
I
opinion.
got all day.
Not been to the Big Hill too much during the growing season, but one of the fun things I did a couple years ago was driving along around Dexter, and I looked out and I was like, I don't know what that is, and then it finally hit me that it must be rice.
So actually rice is our major crop for our operation.
And as we all know, that takes a lot of what?
A lot of water. That's right, 33 acre inches on average.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else in favor, please come forward.
Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to testify today, and thank you to Senators Bean and Berger for sponsoring this important piece of legislation. My name is Jamie Blair, and I am here on behalf of Missouri Rural Crisis Center and our farmer members throughout the state. I would like to begin my testimony today with a quote. Every century is characterized by a key commodity, empire commodities. In the 1500s, you had spices, 1600s, sugar, 17 and 1800s, cotton, and 1900s, hydrocarbons. And the 2000s going forward, I think it's really about water. That's from Edward Hardgroves, co-founder of Goldcrest Farm Trust Advisors, which is a venture capital firm that buys farmland and leases it out. I got that from a wonderful documentary called The Grab that we were able to screen recently, and I urge all the members of the committee to watch it. It's very important. I wanted to start with this quote today because I think that it highlights that the future of our economic, national, and food security lies in access to clean water for drinking and for water for livestock and crops. Missouri still allows foreign ownership of Missouri land and farmland, so there is little preventing companies and multinational corporations from exporting untold amounts of our water to parched places around the country and potentially the globe at the expense of Missouri farmers, rural families, and our communities. Our neighbors directly to the west, while not blessed with the ample free-flowing waters that Missouri is blessed with, were nevertheless well placed on the High Plains Aquifer, and in particular the Ogallala Aquifer. Through unchecked pumping, some 2 gallons per day, 2 billion gallons per day pumped for agriculture use alone, they are endangering the future water reserves for all Kansans. Soon they may turn to us for a solution. They could be coming for our water, and why wouldn't they? While I care very much about Americans in neighboring states, and I do consider myself my brother's keeper, I think 2 billion gallons a day at the expense of Missouri farmers is a bridge too far. In closing, Missouri water is one of our most precious resources, and it should be protected from exportation and exploitation. Water is vital to many sectors of Missouri's economy, including agriculture, outdoor recreation, and tourism. States without a regulatory framework for water exports have seen exploitation and degradation of their water resources, in some cases drastically lowering the water table and draining aquifers. Farmers in rural communities are often reliant on well water and will be the first harmed by unchecked water exportation. And if passed, this law would be an important step in protecting this vital resource for future generations, and I urge this committee to pass it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing
so
none,
much.
thank you very much. Anybody else in favor? Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jacob Knable with Missouri Corn Growers Association, and we would like to go on the record in support of both Senate Bill 29 and Senate Bill 82. Quite simply, this bill just aims to protect Missourians' right to Missouri water resources over potential interest for out-of-state usage. It's already been highlighted, but as water woes and scarcity increase in western states, it's only a matter of time before they start looking elsewhere for sources of water to alleviate their problems. It's already been mentioned with the Ogallala Aquifer out in western Kansas, and I think some other people behind me will probably speak to some information that's come out in recent developments with the Kansas Aqueduct Coalition there. We feel that this bill is a proactive approach to handling these types of situations in Missouri before we are faced with our own water problems in our state. Now, although water is essential to every farmer in this state, contrary to what some might have you believe, this legislation goes beyond just helping farmers, but it's good legislation for all Missourians. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in favor? Please come forward.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Feigenbaum with Missouri Farm Bureau, and we
morning.
are testifying in support of these bills. This legislation is very important to our members, especially in the southeast region, and we don't want to see the resources of our aquifers and rivers being exported to other states, leaving us more susceptible to drought and threatening our ag industry. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Anybody else in favor?
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Smith, and I'm a registered lobbyist for the Nature Conservancy, and we're in favor of the substitute. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Anybody else?
There we go. Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Matt Jesse, Director of Government Affairs for Missouri American Water, serving 1 in 4 people in the state of Missouri. I want to thank the sponsors and the Soy Association specifically for working with us on legislative language to allow us to continue serving customers just over the border in Oklahoma. I'm testifying in favor of the Senate committee substitute. We understand the need to protect Missouri's water resources from exportation to states facing water deficiency. As the largest consumer of Missouri's water, we are committed to working with the bill's sponsors to address this important issue so that Missourians, both now and in future generations, have access to water that supports the health of our communities and the growth of our economy. Selling water to additional customers outside of Missouri, but within the bill's defined exemptions of 30 miles, reduces the rate paid by our customers while also protecting our state's water resources. The major out-of-state customer of Missouri American Water is Downstream Casino on the Oklahoma side of the Missouri-Oklahoma border. The casino is a major water user but requires little additional infrastructure costs because of its proximity. Therefore, the water exportation sale to the casino allows us to spread our costs over a larger pool of customers, creating economies of scale and reducing ratepayer costs. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else in favor?
I'm going to sit by the other senator this time, So Casey Wasser today in favor of the bill representing the Missouri Soybean Association. This is something that we've been working on for several years now, and I want to go ahead and take this opportunity to address some of the misunderstandings that I believe were point of contention last session. There were 2 different bills that were filed, and one of them is something that we've worked on for a long time. Anybody that has the capacity to pump 100,000 gallons a day is considered a major water user. Under Missouri law with DNR, a major water user is required to report their water usage to the state of Missouri. Now, I have a lot of members that we encourage to report their accurate information so DNR knows exactly whether or not their water usage is having any positive or negative impact on the water levels in the state. The problem is, and my understanding is the DNR would agree with this, under the Missouri Sunshine Law, there are no protections for their private information. So I may have a farmer, actually I did have a farmer here in Jeff City that met with some senators that has 92 wells across their farms, and when they provide that information, that well location, the well certificate ID number, that person's cell phone and home address is all provided to DNR, and there are no protections for that. So there is a separate bill that I want to make sure you guys know is completely separate from this bill. That bill says that if a major water user uses water within this state, Senator now Henderson has the bill, you can look it up. It says water used within this state. So that information, our goal with that bill, completely separate, is to protect the private information. All the major water users' information would still be, as far as water usage, released to anybody that wanted it under Missouri Sunshine Law. This bill specifically deals with the state's authority, so the federal government has authority over water diversions and rivers. States have the authority to handle state allocation and exports. So this bill deals with anybody applying for a permit to take water outside the state of Missouri. So please do not allow anyone to try and, commingle those two pieces of legislation. And again, to make that clear, last year we put specifically in the bill that would be water usage within the state. I wanted to talk a little bit if there's any questions on those, but I think they're pretty clear based on the language. Kansas was brought up, and I wanted to highlight something that I read. The Ogallala Aquifer was mentioned, and yes, they do not have a Department of Natural Resources in Kansas, and it's actually managed by 14 different local water districts. And the governor, quote, Governor Laura Kelly in her State of the State address even said that she wants to create the Office of Natural Resources because today water in Kansas is managed by 14 different groundwater districts. Missouri is very, very lucky to have a dedicated sales tax that funds our Department of Natural Resources. We believe, the Missouri Soybean Association believes, that DNR does a really good job of monitoring our water levels across the state. We are home to 500 trillion gallons of subsurface water that supplies about 80% of our rural drinking water. That is something that we should all take very seriously protecting. And again, I'd like to thank American Water for their testimony because they've been a really good steward of our water. And I think that there are legitimate reasons to be good neighbors. I mean, just look at City of Kansas City. Those borders don't mean anything to a company that's trying to provide good drinking water to people that may live within a 30-mile region. We're talking about massive exports of water to try to fill aquifers that might have been abused by other individuals. So we're in full support of this bill. We think that this is, again, a very good way to do it. And both senators mentioned the unconstitutionality of banning exports altogether. So if you'd like any of that case law, we can provide it, but it was first established in 1982. And then the city of El Paso had a bill that they passed, thrown out. It was ruled unconstitutional back in 1983, holding up that you cannot just ban exports. So I want to thank both these senators. They put a lot of time and effort into this bill, and we wholeheartedly support it. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Senator McCurry?
Hopefully it's all right with you, but since the witness brought up another bill, if I remember the debate last year, so the information about large water users, or probably our largest water users, the information would still be available, but the private information, like their cell phones and things like that, would be redacted.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was even, so our largest water user in the state's for power generation, actually, but most of that water, it gets right back into the system. So we made sure that it was specific to agricultural producers using water within this state. We wanted to clear up any of that. So all the information is still reported. All the water usage information can be released. It's just not the fact that Tracy McCurry pumped, 1 billion gallons of water last year.
And what my cell phone number is.
Exactly.
And that kind of thing. No,
exactly.
I get that. I just, in other committees, like looking at water usage that data centers and places like that use, there have been situations in other states where big users of water are actually, bringing people's wells down and things like that. So I do want to make sure that there's not some, big feud in a town where they don't know what the heck is happening. Like, why is my well dry all of a sudden?
That's right.
So-
Yeah, and to that point, that's why I think we are very lucky to have the Department of Natural Resources and the whole team they have dedicated to making sure that our water resources are protected. Unfortunately, they just have no mechanism under state law to even gauge, have an understanding of what's leaving our state, or to even analyze whether it would have an impact on somebody's or some communities' water levels.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
bet.
Anybody else in favor? Please come forward.
Thank you. My name is John Madras, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Missouri Sierra Club. We support these bills because they would provide reasonable safeguards from ill-conceived projects that may harm the public or the environment. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Thank you very much. How about you, sir?
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today representing the Missouri Cattlemen's Association. Praise Casey for the great job he did. I can't add anything else. Be happy to answer any questions. That's right. And I don't mind it one bit.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tony Benz, representing the Missouri Agribusiness Association, here in support and happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in favor? Seeing none, any opposed, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Bean, first I want to say I kind of appreciate SB 122. I hope that goes somewhere that you filed, but I have to be a little bit opposed to this one. I appreciate everybody's thought of wanting to protect our water because it is absolutely, I apologize. My name is Ike Skelton. I'm the presiding commissioner of Camden County, and I'm also on I'm a member of the Missouri Association of Counties and on the steering committee for agriculture and environment. And this bill and this issue was voted in regular session of Missouri Association of Counties to oppose. We do appreciate the fact that we want to protect our waters, but there is no method for exportation right now. And I believe that by putting this in place, we already heard from some folks that they're ready to sell water tomorrow if they had the authority to do it. And I believe that we have the protections in place now. There are already things that say you have to report major water usage. There is no mechanism to move it out of the state now. I know we mentioned, I really like the bill, and I think you could have stopped right where it says withdraw water from any water source for export outside the state of Missouri is prohibited. So I think that would be, we could stop right there. And I understand you brought up the Interstate Commerce Clause. Interstate Commerce Clause was really, as I understand it, was to regulate commerce across the country and among the states. And I really kind of believe that if we were to put this in place and start picking and choosing who could and could not export water outside the state of Missouri, that you're actually kind of putting something in place that might be an interstate commerce challenge because you are picking and choosing winners and losers. Whereas if you restrict water export to anyone, then that is fair across the board. You're not picking winners and losers, and you're making it just a simple no, we're not going to give water to anyone. There's also a corridor that is proposed across the country that would help move water from one state to another. As a member of the National Association of Counties, I also understand that several states have problems with water, especially in the desert and California, and they want more water that they can get a hold of. And you're right, they probably will try to come get ours someday. And I just believe that if we had that protection that no, you can't have it at all, I think that would be best. I also believe that this bill puts in an entire layer of bureaucracy that isn't necessary. Again, there are protections, and I also think that the biggest protection we have is that individual water rights, riparian water rights, that if your wells do start to go dry, you can absolutely file action in court to protect your water rights. However, if you have this layer in place, now not only is a property owner and a water owner having to fight the individual that is using too much water and making their well go dry, they're also going to have to fight the Department of Natural Resources if they have been given that permit. As a commissioner, I also don't necessarily want to have another thing put on my plate that we have to determine whether or not we're going to allow the export of water from a particular area. I'm sure there's something else I could bring up, but I think I've touched the points I'd like, and for the interest of time, I will be quiet.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator McCurry, go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, one of my favorite spots to visit in the region where I live is where the Missouri River and the Mississippi River connect. It's quite amazing to see the power of those rivers
Yes,
coming
it is.
together there. I'm trying to understand this from the county point of view, but if we truly did what you suggested, we would be in a situation where we could just capture water coming from the Missouri and the Mississippi and just say, like, all the water's ours. Good luck to the rest of not just the country, but quite honestly, the world. Ultimately, everything that we do here in Missouri hits the Mississippi and impacts the states south of us. It goes into the Gulf, and I think you don't have to be a scientist to think that what we're doing here actually impacts the entire planet. So how do you and your colleagues justify this no exportation at all, knowing that we are benefiting from things that are flowing through here and aren't necessarily our property?
Well, in your example, I think there are probably some, and I don't know all the different laws and rules and regulations, but I'm pretty sure that there is something that would prevent the state of Missouri trying to divert the Missouri River and just keep it for ourselves. So I think that's probably something we're not doing that now, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to do that in the future. So I don't think that I'm more concerned, honestly, about our groundwater, our drinking water, the water for all the cattle and other agricultural needs that we use. And if we start drawing into that, and I haven't seen the committee substitute, some folks have testified in favor of the committee substitute, so I don't know if they've got a copy and the general public doesn't. Oh, they're there now? Okay. Well, I'll have to take a look at that. I don't know if we're going to testify on it again, but maybe there's some changes in there that make it better. I don't know, but we haven't had a chance to see it. So I'm here testifying on what I know for sure that we have out. But again, I don't think that we would have that issue. That's not going to happen. And again, I'm more worried about our groundwater that we drink and use for our agriculture.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that that's the county's position. I just, it's hard for me, water is a different type of property, if you will, because it is always moving and, water flows downhill. So I'm just trying to understand. I think what we're trying to do is kind of strike the right balance on
Right.
this.
Well, the aquifers, I don't know how much they move and flow around. Obviously they do, but our aquifer in Missouri is one of the best in the country. And I think we need to do everything we can to protect it and keep it right here in Missouri. I love my country. I served 8 years for my country in the United States Army, so I get the idea of the United States. I surely do. But we are separate states, and we need to protect Missouri.
Okay.
That's my biggest concern.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I step forward and get a copy of that real quick? I apologize if there are any more questions.
Senator Gregory.
I'll just point out in subsection 10, it does say nothing in the section shall preclude a person from bringing any constitutional, statutory, or common law claim to vindicate or otherwise defend the person's water rights. A permit issued under this section shall not serve as a defense to any claim brought against a water permit holder for infringement of water rights. And so that's the riparian side of things. Just wanted to point
Right,
out.
I knew that was in there, and that's why I brought up the fact that right now, a person could file a suit to protect their water rights as it is. But if this is put in place, now the litigant, the property owner, has to deal with the Department of Natural Resources and the individual taking your water. So you have an entire state agency that you would have to fight against because they gave the permit. And as we know, the state agency's pockets are pretty deep. So
As of right now, we have no idea of where it's going or anything. So I feel like this section is good enough because it tells me that there is a pathway. It gives me the pathway. It gives me an option.
Well, RSMO 256410 states that that major water users have to tell the Department of Natural Resources what they're doing, so you would have a source of where that water is coming from. And if your area and went dry, then you could just file a bill in court, just yourself, against that individual that's using too much water and potentially making your well go dry. Again, whereas in this condition, if you have this in place, you now have a layer of bureaucracy that the property owner has to fight. Sure, it allows you to make claim in court, I get that, but now you're not just fighting the individual that's using the water, you also have to fight the bureaucracy that gave them permission to use that water. And I would actually probably suggest that those that are using that water and exporting it would fall to the Department of Natural Resources in their defense on any litigation, saying, well, hey, this agency gave me the authority to do it, go sue them, not me. So I think it really just puts another layer of bureaucracy in place that would make it actually much more difficult for your small landowner, your small cattle producers, or row croppers to fight an instance where too much water was being used.
But so it sounds like what you're saying is you would rather leave it to where there's no permitting process anywhere. If we start a permitting process, that has to come from some sort of state agency.
Well, I understand that, but if there is no permitting process and someone uses too much water, which they have to already tell the Department of Natural Resources how much they're using, an individual could still go block that in court because you have a riparian rights to the water that you have.
To my knowledge from last year's legislation, is there any teeth, is there any requirement in reporting what's used?
As far as the bill.
And I'm seeing shaking heads in the audience right now. That's the one thing I garnered from last year, is that right now there is no requirement to report what's used.
It says right there, no major water user shall withdraw or divert water from any water source without filing an official registration document with the division. And it talks about over 100,000 gallons, I'm pretty sure. I don't know all of them.
There's no teeth to anything. It's an optional.
Well, nuisance, unregistered diversion of water. Nuisance, unregistered diversion of water by major water user, an injunction, section 256-415, states that any unregistered diversion of water by major water user is hereby declared to be a nuisance, and the director may request the Attorney General to fire an injunction. So there is protection if somebody uses too much water already and doesn't tell the department about it.
And I understand that. And I like the permitting process. It will give full knowledge of who is going to be the one that's going to be taking the $2 billion and sending it across state lines potentially. And that will give us the rights to say yay or nay. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the back and forth. I just want to try and clarify.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. You said the Association of Counties voted to disapprove?
Address this issue, yes.
So do address the issue, or I thought you said they voted against this issue?
Well, we voted to oppose this issue, yes, in open session. I introduced it during the steering committee, and that packet was put before the full membership, and it was voted on.
Okay, so was their reason the same as yours, or did they have other reasons to oppose this legislation?
I presented it to the steering committee, and they tended to agree with me, and it went forward. Now, I don't see any of them here, so I don't know if they have any other objections.
I know, but you all have a lobbyist, don't you? You have Association of Counties that have a lobbyist?
Yes.
Okay. Was he aware that you were opposed to this bill?
Should have been. Again, it was an open session. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting just last Thursday, and the list of items on that was not SB29. When I brought it up, they said, oh, well, we'll add that. I don't know why they're not paying attention to it as much as again, the members voted in open session to
Thank you.
this.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else opposed to this legislation, please come forward.
Lisa Panett, Armor Vine. Of course, we don't want people to export our water, but I think right now we have the perfect system in place. We all have access to our water. It's not crazy high. So we have a really good system going on right now. What this would do would be to take it to a permit system, which I think was already even talked about, that there's people that want to be the ones deemed as the beneficial users of the water in the state. And they want the keys to the kingdom, per se. And that is for the people. It's not for whoever government deems is the beneficial user and should be given the permit. In California, we see how well that's worked for them. So there's somebody that holds the majority of the water in California. They don't have access to their water. The water that they do have is rationed, and it's through the roof. I'm in contact with people in Michigan. Michigan said that they have a permit system. Guess what? All their water is getting shipped out from the day that that permit system was put into place. And they said Nestle. Nestle is the one with the permit there, and they're shipping out all the water under a permit system because they have deemed that they're the most beneficial users of the state. Well, I think in Missouri, the people, the citizens of Missouri, the ones that are paying the taxes, the ones that are the residents, and the small businesses, those people are the ones that have the right. They are. The farmers are. But when you talk about, even if we were talking about a large-scale farming operation, that they want to be the only ones deemed, with the keys of the kingdom, that wouldn't be right either. Because your liberty is to the umph degree until you infringe upon my liberty with water rights. And that's the way that it should be. And I should be able to take you to court, and I shouldn't have to go through DNR and their permit process, and they have much more money than the normal citizen does to fight them. If you don't think that's the case, look at normal little counties right now that are trying to take on the federal government. It's not a doable situation. With that, I just close and
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else opposed to this piece of legislation, please come forward. Anybody for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing. You want me to gavel out? Or I'll let you do that. You're the chairman.
No further business coming for the committee. I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second? Have a second. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.